Let's talk about Unit 6, section views. A section view is created by passing an imaginary cutting plane through the object and removing the part nearest the observer. This allows a direct view of the inside of the part. Sections are all over the place. They're on all levels of complexity in drawings, from very simple to very complex. It's a concept you have to understand to get really good at interpreting and making drawings. Sections use two kinds of lines. They use the cutting plane line, which shows you where the section is being taken from. So this orients you to what's going on. And then in the section view, the section lines show you where the part was cut. So it lets you know that this is the inside of the part. This isn't a tangible thing you can touch. It's kind of imaginary. Section lines are normally drawn at a 45-degree angle to the bottom of the paper. Sometimes this isn't possible if the part is tilted on the paper, right? So it's just a funny shaped part. You want your lines to be opposite the part. So you don't want the outline of the part and the section lines going in the same direction. But normally this isn't a problem. Another situation where you might do section lines in a different angle is when you have multiple parts in an assembly. You want the section lines to go in different angles to indicate that there are different parts in the assembly. A very common technique with section views is something called a full section. A full section omits the cutting plane line. It can do this because the part will be symmetrical. So something like a screw or a bolt, no matter where you cut it, it's going to be the same. So you don't really need that cutting plane line. In addition, it should really be in projection with the primary view. So in this scheme, you just have a part, and then you have a section view above it, below it, beside it, wherever, with no lines indicating where it came from. It should just be obvious on the drawing. This just clears up the drawing of extra lines that don't really need to be there. Another type of section view is called the half section. So this view is kind of like having your cake and eating it too. This is typically used with round parts where you want to have two views and a section. So say you have a front view, you got your right view, and you want a section. What a half section does is let you put that, say, right view and section in the same view. So you just take a section of half of one view if the part is symmetrical. This is common with things like wheel hubs and round parts. With the half section view, you're only going to use one arrow to indicate where the object is cut. And you typically take a quarter out of a round part. Then the other view, there'll be a center line going through it, letting you know where the section stops. The next kind of section view is the offset section view. Now you'll see this a lot with tools and dies. What you end up with is a lot of bolt patterns, and they might not always be symmetrical. Instead of cutting through the middle of a part where there may or may not be any bolts, you can have your section go through all the bolt holes, or half of them if you will, to show them in section. So all you do is you take your viewing plane line and you just go through the part at right angles through the bolt holes. When you show it in section, you don't indicate that you did this. The section will still look the same. You don't show where it bent. The viewing plane line is all that you need to indicate that it's an offset section view. If you did not have offset sections, you might have to show 5 or 6 individual section views to get that information across. So it's a real time saver. Our next section view is called the aligned section view. This is really popular with round parts with either spokes or bolt patterns. So what it lets you do, instead of going, say you've got a wheel with 3 holes in it, instead of taking a section through 1 hole and then through the rest of the part, you can take your section through 1 hole and at the center line, have your section go through the other hole so that you can show them both in section. It's a handy time saver. It makes your sections symmetrical. Instead of having a section with 1 hole in it, it's a little bit misleading when you're looking at the drawing. Typically for cylindrical objects with an odd number of features. Our next is the broken out section view. This is very handy when you don't want to create another view. What it does is makes a section on a primary view that already exists. So say you have a front view and you want to show some detail about a counterbore. You can just do a section through that view. You use a short break line or even a squiggly line. Different drafters do it different ways. So you draw a little squiggle through the part to show where the section is being taken from, and you just add your section lines. And then whatever you're trying to show, be it a hole or a counterbore or a pocket, whatever, that will be shown with visible lines so that you can dimension it. This saves on having extra views on the drawing. Typically, drafters want to keep as few views as possible with as much information as possible. That way, whoever is reading the drawing isn't bouncing around looking for information. The revolved section view is popular for cylindrical objects. It's often in wheels and spokes. What it does, just like we were talking about before, it eliminates an extra view. So it takes the section of something and shows it right on the object. So if it's a donut, right, you'll just take a piece of that donut, flip it around right on that front view. There's a couple of ways to do this. Sometimes you just show the object. Sometimes you use break lines and break it out to show. This can be used for all kinds of shapes, so things like I-beams or W-beams or circle, oval, whatever. It just saves the number of views. The next are removed view callout is useful when your drawing starts to get crowded. So all it is instead of having your section view in projection, what you would do, if you run out of room, you have your front view, top view, you just take that top view and put it wherever you want. The cutting plane lines let you know where the section is being taken from. This is where the cutting plane line identifications come in. So you'll usually see something like section AA, AB, BB, whatever. Your view will have a little note under it that says section AA. So you know where to go on the drawing to find that information. There's some conventions with sections. Typically, ribs are not shown in section, even though according to projection theory, they should be. This is just a drafting practice that pretty much everybody agrees on. There are some tricks with showing spokes where you won't show certain things in projection. And the last thing to talk about are sections in assembly drawings. In assembly drawings, you want any adjacent parts to have section lines that are going in an obviously different angle so that it doesn't look like the exact same part.